Well, welcome. We're going to go back to our normal viewing schedule. The last month has been all the local candidates. You know, this year, Milford's fortunate. We have 7 people running for school committee and 2 running for selectmen. So that's taken us up all of our activities for the last month. But now we're back to our normal liberal view and conservative view. And we actually have a libertarian view that stepped up.
Oh, cool.
So let's start with introductions.
I'm Christine Crane, and I chapter leader for Drinking Liberally in Milford, second and fourth Wednesday of the month.
I'm Carolyn Barthel. I live in Mendon, part of the Mendon Democratic Town Committee, part of Drinking Liberally, and I'm a climate activist.
I'm Rand Barthel. I also live in Mendon. And I am a member of the Democratic Town Committee of Mendon and an occasional participant in Drinking Liberally. I'm currently kind of taking a sabbatical from climate activism so that I can help find a minister for our church. And I'll be going back once we get that done.
Hi, I'm Lisa Melzinski, and I'm from Douglas and a member of the Democratic State Committee and also support, as much as I can, Drinking Liberally.
I guess one topic that there's a number of them that have heated up quickly, but the whole gun control. Individual rights versus community safety. I mean, where do we start? Rand, you want to give us a start on gun control?
Oh, I get to start, okay. Well, I can certainly, I think this has flared up in part because we've had these highly publicized massacres that have involved these assault-type weapons that can spew out bullets in large numbers. But actually, if you look at the statistics, you find that most of the people who get shot to death every year are handguns are predominantly the main type of weapon that gets used, and it's about 3/5 suicides. And so I think there are a lot of different parts of the gun violence and gun death problem, and there is perhaps not necessarily one magic bullet, so to speak, that's going to fix them all. But
Carol?
I think it's been evolving over time. People are just horrified with what has been happening, and it's just been. I think we've gotten to a level where we're recognizing that this is becoming normal, and this is not acceptable. We can't have this kind of normal. It is not. It is. There are other options, and I think the fact that the Parkland kids have been so vocal, and that's what they have done. That's how they have used their horrific experience to make it real to the rest of the country.
They get out and they protest. We want control. What is the option? What can we do? When somebody says, how could somebody go into a school and shoot people? I looked and said, if you can understand that, your mind is as warped as theirs. Yeah. Because I can't understand.
It is not a rational thing to do in any frame of reference that makes any sense.
What would drive me to go in and shoot little kids? I'm sorry, I can't understand that.
But we have to accept the fact that there are people who are disturbed enough to do that.
We have to curb it.
But we have to coalesce
behind now there's the question.
Some actual steps. What do you do? And
Christine?
Yeah, we tend to oversimplify things sometimes, and I think it's a very complicated issue. 2 separate issues. Trying to understand the mindset of somebody who would do that. This is completely separate from, we need to deal with gun control, and that's big umbrella control. What that looks like, that comes down to the details. And I think there's many different things we could do because it's a systemic problem. It's not an either or. It's not an automatic weapon or a handgun. It's not mental health or people abuse. It's everything. So it needs to be looked at systemically, and it's going to take time. So we can't oversimplify it.
I'm just stuck. Because
I do have some ideas.
okay, Lisa, do you want to chime in before we get Rand's ideas?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So first of all, kudos and bravo to those students, those
Holy
young
mackerel.
people who did such a fantastic job this past weekend. And it's about time somebody stepped up, because it's not just the schools. If you're a young person of color in the city of Chicago, the statistics are against you. It is awful. They are in jeopardy every single day. Some of these inner cities and different places in California and all over the country. We are fortunate in Massachusetts because we have some very strict gun laws. And of course, some people think that those are too strict, but that does not prohibit you to own a weapon under the Second Amendment. I don't think people know that the Parkland AR-15 was manufactured in Massachusetts.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, by Smith & Wesson.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, while we have strict gun laws, we also still manufacture guns. And the automatic rifles have one purpose, and that is to execute people in a war situation.
But automatic weapons are forbidden.
No, in Massachusetts, there's a
Well, let's be
No,
clear
no,
about
no.
this.
Wait a minute.
automatic rifles.
Yes, are against the law in the United States
No.
unless you have a special machine gun permit.
No.
Yeah, that's actually, that is.
No,
that
no,
is
you're
actually
thinking
correct.
semi-automatic.
Yeah, let's
Be
distinguish
careful, because
between-
there's where
yeah.
people get confused.
Yeah,
A semi-automatic weapon, like an AR-15,
Right.
is legal to, well, not anymore, but it was legal to
Well,
buy.
Well, it
is
hasn't been
still
made
legal to
illegal
buy.
yet.
No.
It hasn't been made.
It's
no-
still legal to
illegal.
buy.
You can't buy an AR-15
Oh, yeah,
in
you can.
Massachusetts.
Yes, you
Well,
can.
we-
No,
well-
not in
The bump
Massachusetts.
stock.
In any other state, you can.
Right. The bump stock, which
Right.
converts a semi-automatic to an automatic, is illegal.
No, that was
Massachusetts.
just made illegal in Massachusetts.
Right.
However, there is no, when you bought a bump stock, you weren't required to, and no one was required to log that. So even though it is illegal to have one now, we don't know how many
We don't
people
know
have
who
We
them.
have no idea how many
Right.
there are.
So, yes, we took swift action on the bump stock, but that basically
And you
is
can
toothless.
still buy a used AR-15 from
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah, I mean, when they outlawed machine guns in 1986, they grandfathered the ones that were in private hands
Yeah.
at that
So if you
time
owned
and
a machine
imposed
gun,
a very restrictive license that
The
you have to
value
have
of
in
that
order to
machine
own
gun
one.
just went way up,
Right.
Right,
because now you're limiting how many new ones can be introduced legally.
right. And you're making, in order for someone to buy one, though, they have to get an expensive, hard to get license.
Well, you have to get a
And-
machine gun license.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a
And
question.
So, yeah,
My ignorance about
No,
guns,
sure.
okay? Semi-automatic, automatic, you're saying the semi-automatic is
So-
illegal?
yeah,
Semi-automatic is simple. You have to pull the trigger for every round.
Okay,
for every shot.
For every shot.
and
for
that's
every-
illegal in Massachusetts?
No, that's legal.
That's legal.
That is legal.
Okay.
Fully automatic is
Fully
you hold the
automatic.
trigger
You just hold the
down
trigger
and
and it
it
keeps
goes.
firing.
And realistically, even the military has gone away, because if you ever fired an AK-47 or an M16, when you hold it, after 3 shots, I'm shooting birds.
Right.
Right,
So the
Yeah, they-
automatic weapons in the old days had single shot. It was a little flip.
Mm-hmm.
3 shot, automatic. And what the military figured out quickly is fully automatic, unless you had it
It's not
bolted down,
practical.
you're wasting ammo.
Right.
right.
But
Right.
you know, again, to own, my understanding is you can get an FID card, firearms identification card, and that gives you the ability to buy a gun, to own a gun legally.
To carry a gun.
Now, for a pistol, there's a separate level, a
Right.
pistol permit.
Which has to do with whether you can carry it concealed or open.
Then you have
and stuff
open
like
and
that.
concealed.
Right.
So I can have a pistol permit for taking it down to the range, and I have it out in the open, in the back of my car,
So people
I'm
can see
carrying
it.
it, but there's another level where I'm concealing it.
Right.
And my understanding is your local chief of police, and I may not be right on this one, but he has the right to deny you
Yes, he does.
Yes.
a concealed carry
Right.
weapon.
No, he has the
permit.
right to deny you an FID card as well.
Does he?
Yes.
Yeah,
Strong
Yeah.
chiefs, they can deny.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I thought the FID cards were pretty, well, maybe it's just the level of
It-
proof.
It may be fairly customary to
Yeah.
kind of hand them out, but the police department can actually exercise judgment
Which is
on
good.
whether
See-
you can do this.
Do you have an issue with waiting 3 days to buy a gun?
No, well, I actually don't have the experience because I haven't tried to buy a gun before, but, so
When I was a
perhaps I'm
kid,
not-
I bought a number of them. And I went, I got my FID card. It took me whatever it was, a week or whatever. Now 3 days.
Right,
I guess I don't have a problem. Now, I am a gun owner, to be transparent. I've got my Ithaca Featherlight that I bought when I was a teenager. And I had other rifles that I sold. When my wife came in the house, she said, get rid of them. I just never could get rid of my first one. You know, but I guess I got an issue. If I want to buy a gun right now,
What's
Yeah.
the urgency?
that's my
yeah.
problem.
Yeah, what's the, what's
I'm
the point
trying
of
to
that?
understand, because I will
Yeah.
It's not like you're going
support
through
your
withdrawal or
right
something and you
under
need
the
the
Second
medicine.
Amendment to own a gun.
Right.
The Constitution does protect it under most people's interpretation. But if I need to buy one right now, I'm a little scared.
Well, what are the possible
Why-
reasons for that,
why
and
do
how
you
many
say
of
this?
them are legit?
I'm going to a gun show on Saturday, so I'll go to see Tom O'Laughlin or, you know, the weapons officer in Milford on Tuesday.
Yeah, that's called planning.
If I'm not raising any red flags, I'll get my authorization, my FID card, my permit by Thursday or Friday. Okay. I knew I'm only going to buy a gun on Saturday.
Right, but that's because you're a responsible gun owner. The other part of the equation here is that there are so many guns in this country that if you needed one right away, you could either buy one off the street or find one in a relative's home and steal it.
Well, you know, they say there's over 200 million,
It's like
Yeah.
300
Guns.
million almost.
right? And there's 300 million people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in this room, that would say that 3 out of us, or 4 out of the
My
5.
husband has guns.
Okay.
But see, you say guns.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key.
Well,
Okay.
Most people
well,
don't
so-
have a gun.
No.
Yeah,
Well, let me
Well-
qualify that.
Yeah.
He's got a shotgun
yes.
and he's got a pellet, air gun.
Oh, an air
Those don't
rifle.
count.
That's
Okay.
not really quite,
So
that's,
my shotgun counts.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, he's got
Yeah.
a shotgun. Then.
I have a shotgun, it counts. My BB guns,
not,
Don't count.
not so much.
Okay.
But, it's actually, the ownership of guns is quite skewed. You have, I think it's like 3% of the households in the country own between a third and a half of all the
Right.
guns,
Right.
which means that you've got people who really have dozens of guns.
and see, there's the
And
problem I have with passing laws, because they only deal with, I mean, when the trigger law came out,
Yeah,
I went down and I bought my little trigger guard,
yeah.
and I put it on my shotgun, probably about 8-9 years ago, and I locked it, and it's never been unlocked, because I
You
haven't
can't find the
touched it.
key.
Yeah.
Well, I think I know where it is, but
keys, so now.
I didn't mind living up to the law.
Saw it in half, can't use it.
But, you know, the question comes out, okay, is it a right? Are you entitled to own a gun, even if you're a criminal or you have mental illness or?
Well, and, we have other rights in the Constitution, and there are some reasonable restrictions on it. So, for example,
Called
you know,
life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
so, for example, freedom of speech and freedom of the press does not give you the right to
To yell
slander
fire.
somebody
Well,
or
it-
libel somebody.
You know,
And
you hit
freedom
it.
of assembly
If I
doesn't
walk
mean you don't have to get
into-
a parade permit
But if
to
I
have
walk
a march.
into a movie studio and yell fire,
Yeah.
because that's my freedom of speech, I can say what I want. No, you can't.
When it
you
negatively
can't actually
You're
do
impacts
that.
people.
endangering
People.
people.
Correct.
People could
Compromise
get
their
hurt.
safety.
So there is both rights and there is the responsibility to exercise rights reasonably and responsibly in a way that doesn't harm other people. And
So how do you control the gun violence?
Right. Well, there are some things I think would be useful to do, and I think that I mean, I for one have seen enough of these massacres. So I think that, and the way I think we should deal with that is we should either treat semi-automatic weapons that have interchangeable magazines, so that they can fire as so that you can fire 30
carry
rounds.
5 clips.
Fire 30 rounds, have extra mags, and they can change them a couple
Right.
of seconds and be in business again. I don't think that needs to be legal. I think we can do what Australia did after a massacre, a mass shooting. They prohibited semi-automatic weapons entirely, and they basically said, here's a nation that has an active gun culture that said, you know what, bolt-action rifles are good enough for us. We can live with that.
Apparently,
that's
they
a-
don't have a good NRA there.
Well, they actually had, there was a lot of opposition to this because they raised taxes to buy back all of the semi-automatic rifles, 600,000 of them.
But
And
now, how do you answer
So-
the people that say, okay, but then the criminals will be the only ones with semi-automatic?
well, so the way that works is, the criminals by and large do not have assembly lines. So, they can only, in the long run, they can only have things that are being manufactured and marketed to the general public. So you end it at the source, and eventually you clean up what's left over. So that's and so if we can't get that, then I think it would be worth raising the ownership age to maybe 25 for semi-automatics, make them different from other kinds of guns.
Well, let me ask you this, though.
Yeah.
Doesn't that infringe on the rights of young people?
Well,
Why would you change the age to 25?
well,
Because
how many over
insurance-
25 people have been doing these massacres?
How many 18 and older people do we export overseas to kill people?
Yeah, well, I
If
mean,
we can
that's-
export people overseas to kill people at the age of 18, I don't see how we can prohibit them from owning a gun until they're 25.
No, he's saying
What do you mean-
not
Well, I don't
guns,
think those two things have
Same.
anything to do with each other.
Yes, they do.
semi-automatic.
I know.
Is that what you're saying?
What do you mean
No.
export?
Just guns?
You put somebody in the army,
Yeah.
You put somebody in the army at the age of 18 or 19.
They get training.
And they get
that's
trained.
different, too.
And
Yes, but we've had massacres on
army bases.
Army
Oh, and they all have
Yeah.
guns on army bases, don't
yeah.
they? that
And the
didn't stop
guns are
massacre.
very controlled on army bases.
Yeah.
Now, we had a suggestion that we ought to arm a bazooka for every kid.
Yeah. Well,
Or
I mean,
every teacher.
do we really want to live in a country that's like that?
Well,
I mean,
but if you're going
No.
to do that, where do
I
you
sure
draw
don't.
the line?
Right.
Maybe we should go for grenades.
Well, I mean,
What about-
I'm being
let's
facetious when I say
re-legalize
bazooka.
the machine
I know.
guns.
When they
and-
say
Yeah.
one way of stopping it is to arm all the teachers.
Yeah, well,
Oh, and also CPR.
yeah,
Oh, right,
which
right.
is not what you do with somebody who's been shot full of holes, by the way.
That's not the point. You can teach them CPR.
Yeah,
Well, we're hearing
we should do that anyway.
the
but-
rumor mill in Milford that we're looking at maybe an alternative is to add more trained policemen to the schools.
Cha-ching.
Well,
Well, it's gonna
it
cost money.
Costs money.
It's
and-
going to absolutely cost money, but
And there are other
is
things
that
you
a
can do.
viable
You can-
option?
Well, you can also do things with the way schools are constructed and the way doors are and things like that to make it easier to lock them down more securely. And
And that-
there are things you can do.
But that's
all
really
which cost
interesting
money.
because let's say the money you put aside. I mean, Milford's
Suppose that
always,
you grew
Milford's
enough-
always come up with money when it comes down to taking care of our kids.
Yeah.
But you have a button that locks down all of the doors. We're going to spend $250,000 upgrading the fire doors at Stacy
Yeah.
to open them during a fire. Why? Because if you lock them down and there's a fire,
Can't
Then
get
nobody can get out.
nobody can get out.
Right.
So
Now you're saying, let's do the opposite thing.
if I hit a button and all the doors open, then all the bad people can get in.
Right.
So to me, I'm not smart enough to figure out,
Well, this is now another button that locks everything down.
but how do I keep the bad people from hitting the button that
How many bad
Opens-
people are we talking about?
But you're also locking the bad people in.
Yeah.
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 Could be in
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
See, and there's a
So-
question, because I've heard people say, okay, you take Milford High, the cafeteria. Put bulletproof glass instead of regular glass to keep people from shooting in. And all you're doing is you're trying to delay a bad person long enough for the cavalry to come in. I don't know what's the right blend.
The security person who was at Parkland didn't go in.
Well,
and-
I got to tell you something. I have no sympathy for if I take a job to protect the kids, and you say, well, you can't blame him for not wanting to get in harm's way. Actually,
You
I
actually
can.
paid him to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and-
Don't sign up.
and
If you
hopefully
don't want to
trained
be in
him.
harm's way, don't sign up for the job.
Right.
But I'm paying you
Right.
because
Which
I'm
is-
counting on you being the guy that
Right.
steps up or
Which
the
is
gal that
different
steps up.
which is different from what the teachers signed up for. None of them signed up for this.
I mean, we don't hire teachers to carry guns.
No.
And
No.
you know, and I think that you start thinking about keeping guns in schools. I'm not convinced that this has been thought through very well, because the last time I checked,
Really?
teaching can be a highly stressful activity, and guns kind of accessible so that a teacher can grab one and defend the
Or
school.
how do you know that the
And
teacher
the teacher
doesn't
loses it? The
recognize
teacher has had a bad day
Rand
at
is
home.
a teacher that I don't know, and I see Rand walking down the hall with a gun.
Oh, here's the real
Lucky
thing.
you're white.
You're a young black teacher.
Yeah,
You're
there you
male, and there's a shooting situation. Do you grab a gun? What do the police do when they come and see you? We do not live in a colorblind society. We live in a society that has a lot of systemic racism in it.
Well, you brought up, you said if you're a black male in Chicago,
Yeah.
boy,
Well,
is
they
it
look
really
in the black
race?
youth.
I mean, I really feel bad if it's socioeconomical, if it's the
Yeah.
poor that are driving it, that's bad enough. But if now you exacerbate it by saying, if you're poor and colored, it's even worse. God, you'd hope we were over that by now.
Well,
Yeah,
poor
well,
you can't assess by looking at someone.
Right.
Color
Right.
you can.
Yeah.
Anybody who is armed in a situation like that could be taken as the shooter.
And that kind of thing has happened. When Gabby Giffords was shot at that Congress on the Street Corner event, there was actually a person with a gun who attempted to intervene and had to be restrained from shooting the wrong person.
Yeah.
Because in those situations, confusion reigns, and it's
Another
not,
complex question.
The defense, self-defense is. I'm not. We can accept that there is a right to self-defense under certain legal definitions, but it's actually pretty overrated in practice in terms of it. Most of the time, it doesn't
The
work.
census seems as complicated because I'm hearing arguments on all sides. And a lot of them have merit, saying, okay, you can't ask somebody to check off whether they're a legal American citizen.
Whether they're legally in the country, yeah,
Well, if you're legally in the country, well, yeah, you'd be a citizen or you have a green card.
or
you know.
you have some kind of visa that lets you be here.
And the Republicans are claiming the Democrats only care because they'll get those people money and they'll support them and somehow they'll vote for them.
If they're illegal, they can't vote.
But I don't understand how illegals vote.
Right.
Yeah, there's
Right.
been I've not seen any evidence that there are
But
significant numbers of
Milford's
illegal
got
people.
28,000 registered people. And everybody believes we really have about 31,000 living here. Should the federal government be giving us extra money, incentivizing us to have illegal aliens living here?
Well, I'm not sure it incentivizes you
No.
to have them.
But that's the argument, saying, wait a minute, you're
because
taking money
you
away
didn't-
from American
So, wait,
citizens.
are
You
they
didn't
saying-
ask. Milford didn't ask these people to come.
No.
They came because there were more people from their cultural background that were already here, and so they were attracted to come.
But then chase them out.
Okay, sure.
Well, you could do that, but whose job is that?
Well, if it's Milford's problem, the argument is Milford will figure out a way of chasing out all these illegal aliens.
So who in Milford would do that?
And,
See,
who's
now
gonna-
that's
Yeah.
where you get into
Yeah.
the reality,
Yeah. So,
you know.
well, to what extent is the presence of those people causing Milford to have to spend public funds to provide facilities
But
and
Rand,
things like that.
there I would argue they do, because if you have kids in the school,
Yeah,
it's costing you 10 grand a year per
Right.
kid,
right.
okay? If you have to increase your emergency room services,
Yeah.
then you're spending money.
Is that Milford money or is that hospital money?
Yeah, well, where's the hospital get their money? Milford.
Well, if the
Insurance
if the issue is
companies too.
so it would seem to me that you know Milford should, it's not Milford's fault that it has larger than usual proportion of people who are not legally in the country, but Milford is having to cope with the human issues.
But we haven't declared ourselves a sanctuary city. Isn't declaring myself a sanctuary city saying, come on down?
Well, it is certainly saying that you are more likely to be a little bit safer here than somewhere else that hasn't said that.
So what happens if you're in Milford and it's a sanctuary city and you decide to travel to another city that's not a sanctuary city and you get stopped or something happens? What does that mean? Does that mean that because you're a Milford resident and Milford's a sanctuary city that they can't touch you? I mean, how does that work? If you go to another
it's
town?
all it is
No, and
really
it
is
has to do with the police
In that
coordinate their
town, so
efforts
it doesn't
with
matter where
ICE.
you live.
Tell me what a sanctuary city means.
Well, I think what it means is that the by policy or by local law, the local police forces are not allowed to participate in strictly activities that are strictly about enforcing immigration law.
So
they're not. So in other
I'm
words,
not going to help you pick off a person who's just living in Milford, working.
correct.
Okay,
correct.
they're not bothering anybody.
Right. The local police are under no obligation, or actually are under an obligation not to
Coordinate
But
But
with
isn't that
ICE.
against federal law?
pass. Well, it may be against federal law, but is it local police department's job to enforce federal law?
And our police chief has told us more than once, he doesn't want, first of all, if he arrests you,
Yeah.
you're not legally here. He can't deport you to Rhode Island.
Yeah. He does not have the apparatus to do that.
But legally, he can't deport you anywhere.
He can only arrest you
Right.
if he can charge you with some crime under the laws that it's his job to enforce.
No, I just wanted to go back to your premise that if you're here illegally, that means that you're not paying taxes, and you might have a job, but it's my understanding that most illegal immigrants who have jobs do pay taxes. And that doesn't mean if you need to use the emergency room that you're not paying your hospital bill. So I think there's
A lot of assumptions.
Lisa,
Right.
if you're living in Milford,
right.
you're renting an apartment,
So you're paying your landlord.
Okay.
you're paying your landlord, he's paying property taxes.
Right.
As he
Just
would
like
for
any
any
other
other
renter,
renter.
When you're buying food,
you're paying sales tax.
you're paying sales tax or clothes. So, the problem I have with this whole sanctuary thing is that I'm probably wrong, but I draw a line. It's like I invite you into my home. You have dinner, we have a good time, you go home. That's cool. If you came into my house and start breaking my furniture, I want the right to throw your bum out of my house.
Well, and so
Yeah,
your
that's-
local police chief is empowered to arrest somebody who did that to you
Right.
here in Milford and
So
charge them.
if you
and
are caught
put them through the courts.
stealing, dealing drugs, assaulting somebody,
There's no sanctuary for you in that case.
see, that's my point.
There's
I
no
don't see
sanctuary.
where I should protect you. I don't have a problem with local police sending it up the ice chain, saying, I've got this guy, his name is Joe.
X.
Here's his fingerprints. We caught him breaking and entering or assaulting. And ICE comes back and says, that's not Joe, that's Mike from California. He's wanted out there for these crimes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now it becomes a
it's-
question
it's
of
an ICE issue
who
at
gets
that
first
point.
crack at him.
But I want somebody to
Massachusetts or
crack him.
California. Yeah, well, one
You
way
know,
or another, he's
But
going
I
to
was
get
trying to
cracked.
understand your premise with the census.
Well, see, now that's the
Okay.
whole, you start
So-
down the line saying, the census, we have no choice. Every 10 years, there will be a census. We will count everybody. And the question comes up, should we base the federal funds that are doled out on the count or on the legal residents.
There's nothing right now in the policy that says that they have to be legal residents, just as all persons will be counted.
Right.
And that's what you base your services and support and resources on.
So Milford, in that case, would be allotted 131,000th because we have 3,000 illegal or not legal residents, and I don't want to get caught up in the
Undocumented.
words, undocumented. I
Right.
know we'll get it, but you got 28,000 people living here.
Right.
That everybody says are legit.
And you're saying
got-
there are another
There's
3,000.
another 2 or 3 that aren't. So now
But are they counted or not counted?
they're
They're
counted.
counted now. They have
Under,
to.
under census as it has been.
Right.
They will try to count them, and some of them will not want to be counted because they are
Now,
suspicious.
if
But
2,000 check off the box, I'm not here legally, then you're really asking the federal government, if it's, forget the math, $1 a head that you're gonna give me. In one case, I get $28,000 for my community. In the other case, I get 31. The people who wanna only give you 28 are saying, wait a minute, that extra 3 should go to Americans or US residents and increase their services.
So how are they going
But
to police
how
that?
are you going to just distribute that?
So they're going to say, okay, a lot of kids that go to school have been born here. They're technically American citizens. Maybe their parents aren't. And then the police go to respond to a crime, and they get there, oh, okay, let me check your status as a citizen. You're not a citizen. We're going to go. Same
No,
thing with,
but
you know,
You look at Milford. If somebody was to ask me, what ethnic background are you? I say, I'm Portuguese. Now, let's call the ball truthfully. I wouldn't know how to live in Portugal.
no.
My mother, God bless her, who is now 95, almost 95, she's over 94, came here when she was 16.
Right.
She wouldn't know how to live.
Portugal is not the same place it was then.
Milford is her home for,
Yeah.
70 some years.
Right.
So, the whole idea of the DACA kids,
Right.
I mean, I look at these kids and I say, they're as American as anybody because they grew up here. Sending them back home
Yeah.
is
No.
sending them to Rhode Island, Massachusetts, not to some country that they
don't
read
know.
about.
Yeah, there are people who've been here for 20, 30 years, and to send them back home and split up their families to keep the American children here
It's crazy.
and throw the parents out is deplorable.
And again, there's a fundamental question. Which way do you go? When you say send them home, home is Milford. Home is not
Costa
Ecuador,
Rica.
Guatemala, Brazil, Portugal.
So what benefit is it to send these people who are law-abiding citizens that haven't broken the crime?
Well, they're people who they're not citizens technically,
So
but they're
they're
law-abiding.
residents, all right, so
Law-abiding
they're
residents.
They're-
That's what I said.
Law-abiding,
Let's
thank
not
you.
They're
get involved.
constructive members of the
Semantics.
community.
Is it aliens or undocumented or
So
schmotkins?
law-abiding residents, they're here in the community. What benefit is it to all of us to have them deported?
Because then, when the parents are gone, then the state has to come in and take care of the kids, and
But even if they
it's just-
didn't, Carol, I'm here. I have no children. I'm working. I haven't caused anybody any problems, but I'm not here as a documented legal person. So getting rid of me isn't going to hurt kids, but what benefit is it
I don't
to
think
our
there is.
community?
There isn't.
It's going to cost us money to send you.
You're making our case here.
Yeah.
Well, no, but I'm trying to look at both sides.
Yeah.
But this country was built on undocumented immigrants.
All of us are.
We didn't have to show.
Well, unless
our
your name is
ancestors-
Squanto,
Yeah.
you came to this country.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
You think about it,
Well, and-
the Native American population is tiny, and we really didn't do well by them.
No, we did not.
We still don't. We still don't.
That's a whole nother
To this
conversation.
day.
But I'm just saying, let's face it, one way or another, we're all immigrants. Because
Right.
I laughed. I had this debate with somebody where they were talking about the latest wave, and these people are terrible. They butcher animals in their homes. And I started laughing. And he goes, "What's so funny?" I said, "Don't talk about your grandmother that way." And he goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Your grandmother was one of the people I hated as a kid because the truck showed up with 6 pigs, and my mother and 5 other grandmothers or mothers back
Right.
then took out their dang electric knives, and back then there was no cable. So you fried my TV,
Right.
and they cut these pigs into pieces in my garage.
Right.
And my father made a smokehouse, so each of them made the linguiça and the chorizo
Right.
that we ate all year. Okay, let's be careful, because
Yeah.
when you look at the Guatemalans, they're the new Ecuadorians. Who are the new Brazilians? Who are the new Portuguese? Who are the new Irish? Who are the new Italians? Dang these people for being just like us.
You know,
Yeah.
you go back to your own ancestors, they all did that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of them came here before there were any immigration laws. My ancestors came over here in the early 19th century, and back then there were not immigration laws. You just climbed off the boat and started living here.
Right. And to your point that you made before, a lot of the Portuguese came here. I mean, when you think about the whaling ships, people came off, who thought whaling was a good profession.
Yeah.
They came over after one tour and said, "Oh my God, no." So New Beige, New Bedford, Fall River,
Right.
Gloucester.
Said-
And then you got people like my grandfather who came to America. And, I had a hard time leaving my daughters for a few days. He left to come to this country and live like a pauper because he saved every penny he could to send home until he could send for my mother and then my aunts and have his family back together. But there was 8 years that he lived away from his family.
Which is exactly
And
what the
that's-
Mexicans and the Nicaraguans and the
And again, to me-
Panamanians and the
And that's
El
what's the-
Salvadorians
Who are
are
the
doing
Mexicans?
today.
Well, they're the new Portuguese, the new this.
Yeah.
They're okay. It's just a different group.
And that's what is called chain migration. It dehumanizes any experience of a person living here, and recognizing that they came here because they wanted something
But
better.
Carol, should we keep the most liberal immigration laws in the world? I mean, when you talk about chain migration, my grandfather came here legally. He called my mother after so many years. She called her sister after. They didn't come here with PhDs. They didn't have any special skills except they worked like dogs. I'm sorry, I can't say that. They worked very hard, and they made a life for their family. Other countries sit there and say, I really only want people
PhDs.
that have PhDs or that are very wealthy. If you're willing to invest today, if you're willing to invest, I don't know if it's $500,000 now or $1 million, you can get a green card.
Yeah. There are
Lot of-
entire ski areas that have been built on
So
green card business.
So now the question is,
do we keep it?
do
Well,
we keep it or not?
well, how well has it worked for the last 2 centuries? Do we like what the United States became in the last 2 centuries?
Brand, I have to say I like it because I would be on a farm in Portugal if we didn't have the opportunity. And I think too many
Yeah.
people forget
So
There
that
have
if
been changes over the years, though, right? Different quotas. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I
Oh,
know
sure, but-
during-
oh, yeah,
And then it
hundreds
was in
of
the
years,
60s when they
yeah,
allowed.
but in the main, look at the whole of the history of the United States. Has been a very welcoming place
Right.
for people
Compared
coming
to
from
most
all over the
countries,
world.
it is.
Compared to most, and
There was
and,
no, you didn't
you
have
know,
to have a special talent, you just,
yeah.
Now, they have H-1 visas for special talents and all, but that's a tiny little number.
and that's a visa.
You know?
But then
Because
you
you
get
look
the
at-
visa and you
Because
get your
Because you
green
look
card
at
and
you look at what it takes to move to another country where they don't speak the same language that you learned as a baby. That's a very enterprising, brave thing to do, actually. And
I find it
I don't know if I
amazing.
could do it.
I find it
and-
amazing that my grandfather gave up living with his 3 daughters
So
to make their life better.
so that's
Yeah.
precisely the kind of people we want here.
But
So
the
now what-
conversation has evolved, and it involves evolving very quickly these days, I feel, into an us versus them.
Sure.
Well, and it's been that way before. We've been,
But
you
it's,
know,
in the past couple of years,
it certainly
it's
has
been a
flared up.
concerted effort to pit us versus
But now,
them.
is us
in
white
many on many
Europeans
levels,
or is us
Yes.
Republicans versus Democrats?
or women versus men.
Or when?
Well,
See,
I think
that's the problem I
when
have
it comes
with
to
us.
immigration, it's probably us. It's us, white folks.
But my
versus
point is no
people
matter
who
who
aren't
the
so
us
white.
versus them is, that's our conversation point instead of all of us. And it taints every conversation because the us versus them and the men versus women, that's not building anything and lifting
Right.
everyone up. The immigration, the
Too many
same thing.
categories.
If somebody
Yeah.
comes here, regardless how they got here, and they break the law, I mean, serious, not
Enforce the
they're just
law.
living here. They're robbing, they're selling drugs, they're
Catch them and
attacking
prosecute
people.
them.
Would you agree that I don't really think they have a lot of rights?
Of course not.
No,
I don't
they
mind
They broke the
deporting
Of
them.
course
law.
not.
No, they are afforded the same due process under the law.
But the minute they're caught
Exactly.
and they're
They still
proven,
get due
If-
process.
if-
Convicted.
they've been
You know,
convicted.
Right.
If a jury is so satisfied that they did those things, then, you know,
Then I don't want to hear about sanctuary.
No, of
Get
course
out
not.
of my house. You're breaking my furniture.
right.
Right.
Get out of my house. So I take it this group would feel better that Milford gets $31,000 versus 28.
The truth is, it's not reflecting reality. The reality is, if there are 31,000, there are 31,000, and you need to have services no matter who they are.
You can't
And-
actually
and if you-
segregate the dollars. It's
and-
not actually practical.
No, but I'm
to do
just
that.
saying, federal funds are allocated by the residents, not by the legal
Right.
Yes,
residents.
yes, and that's done. That's a state by state kind of thing.
But do you agree with it? Or should we cut it back to 28 and say, Milford, chase those people away?
No, it should be
No,
residence, period.
it should be
That's it.
31,000. Because if you don't adequately provide services for 31,000, you're gonna, the regular citizens are gonna be
Right.
cut.
The
cut
28
short.
will be shortchanged
Shortchanged.
if
So you
if you
have to
don't.
deal with reality.
Now, DACA. The Democrats say the Republicans are holding it up. The Republicans say the Democrats are holding it up.
Well, I'm not sure I want to
That's
get
just-
into that
Well, what's
kind of
holding it up?
finger-pointing, but
I think most Americans agree that if some kid came in at 1 year old or two, I don't care if they're 30 now, aren't they? I mean, it's bad enough that we have this debate of what's a true Milfordian. You know, I went to my daughter and I said,
A what?
Milfordian,
Milfordian.
a person from Milford.
Oh.
what does it
I-
take to be from somewhere?
Right, and I laughed. I said, Lexi, you're now true Milfordian. You're third generation Milford, and you live within 2 miles of your mother. And that makes you a real Milfordian. I'm not sure that just being here for decades, a lot of people don't look at you,
Yeah.
you know, as from Milford.
Well,
So, I mean, it's bad enough you say, okay, what's a Milfordian? Now you look and say, okay, what's an American? Is it that you happen to have been born here? Some countries don't care. If you're here on vacation from oopie doopie, whatever country, and you happen to have been 4 months pregnant, you stayed and you had a child, that child would not be considered part of their country.
Right.
Americans, no, you're born here, it's you.
Right.
That's right.
And that was established in order to enforce the end of slavery, because it's in the 14th Amendment, and it's part of requiring the states to recognize all of their residents as citizens.
But is it right?
Yes.
Well, it's right because that's how we've been practicing it.
But stop, you get to rewrite the Constitution today.
Well, right now it's right.
Would you feel more comfortable
Yes, I would.
saying that kid who's been here, you know, when I think of my mother, she's more American than she is Portuguese. She's been here 70-some years.
Right.
Okay, well, now she's legal and all that good stuff. But if you took that away, telling somebody like that you're not
See,
American,
the reason why birthright citizenship is important is we do not want politicians playing games with who is a citizen and who is not.
but isn't that, I hate to say it, but I'm disappointed in both the Democrats and the Republicans playing this DACA game. You give me my wall, I'll feel good about DACA. You know,
Let's back up a little bit, though, because DACA was established previous administration. These kids came out and they were encouraged, right?
To
be
come out of the
recognized
shadows.
And promised this opportunity. and now we're rescinding it. So now it's polarized both parties. Not saying it's right or wrong, but this is where we're at. And this was something that was created by this administration. And
As leverage for the wall.
yeah,
The previous administration didn't get it through Congress,
right.
right? So
Right.
the president did an executive order.
Right.
That was the best he could do
At the time.
Why?
at the time. Why?
Why?
Because
Because Obama
It's black.
was black. He still is black.
Last
And the
time we checked.
Republicans.
Okay, now I'm
and the
confused. What does that have
Republicans-
to do
But
with
Because
DACA?
the undercurrent we're feeling was racism.
Yes.
And from the day he got into office, Mitch
Then a lot
McConnell,
of these kids are little white kids from.
well, so
doesn't
that's
matter.
not that's
that
not
means
it's-
it means
we're talking about Obama's
talking about-
inability to get anything done because of who he was,
and because they're
or who he is.
well, because the Republican leadership made a decision at the beginning of the Obama administration that they would obstruct
Everything.
everything and just do scorched earth and obstructionism, and we suspect strongly that racism played a role.
But then,
in
isn't that the same thing the Democrats are doing now?
In what way?
In what way?
Anything Reagan brought up is considered bad back then. Anything Trump brings up, we're going to fight. I mean,
Well-
I got very nervous when I heard the Democratic Party saying, I'm going to bork you. Anybody you send to us for the Supreme Court, I'm going to say no.
Is that reflective of the whole Democratic Party, or is that one person talking?
don't
though?
know.
Well,
So-
that's there's been an arms race of borking
And
that has
what
gone on for a
scares
long
me
time on
is
both sides.
If I'm Trump now, and you've told me no matter who I send, I'm going to say no.
Yeah.
You're going to say no. Fine, I'm going to pick somebody
Who's way out there?
who's way out on the right.
Yeah.
And guess what? I know your 50 will say no. My 50 will say yes. Vice President throws the vote. If I keep doing that, what scares me is we got some old justices.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Now,
it's bad.
If I replace them all with far righters, and
In
then
their 30s.
exactly,
Right.
and then all of a sudden the Democrats win the White House, they're going to replace everybody with far lefters.
Yeah.
Well, then it comes down to one. I mean, I kind of like Justice Kennedy because I can't figure out this guy.
he's in the middle.
He seems to vote both sides.
There's been a lot of justices that have been appointed that, you think they're going to be leaning one
Yeah.
way, and they end up becoming,
Yeah.
at times, more moderate.
Earl
or-
Warren was
Yeah.
not supposed to turn out to be the kind of premier liberal Supreme Court justice. He was appointed by Eisenhower, I think.
But again, I feel better with somebody who confuses me and votes the issues. So
I can
Yeah,
respect
I'd rather
that.
have that
part
too.
of me worries
Oh,
that
we should be worried about
we're
this.
playing these
Yeah.
politics, and both parties.
Yeah, and here's the
Seem
thing.
guilty.
Well, and here's the thing. Polarization feeds on itself because, all right. So if the Republicans block every attempt that Obama makes to staff the federal courts, right, and then that keeps a whole bunch of vacancies for them to fill. Well, now the gamesmanship of this basically says that if I'm the Democrats, I can either play the same game,
Sure.
or what's my incentive to not play the same game? Because if I be reasonable and they play by the laws of the jungle, things are going to get more and more their way.
But whether or not you do the facade of saying, I'll let you go through the process, but I'm going to vote no anyway, or you just say, I'm not going to let you even have a
Right.
hearing.
Yeah.
To me, that's equally bad.
Right.
Yeah, well, you're basically saying the same
is.
thing
Yeah,
in both
right.
cases.
I mean,
Just
to me,
one
it's
case
equally
you're-
bad.
One
One,
case
I'm
you're
doing
being
a little bit of
a little
facade,
disingenuous
and
about it.
Yes, but either way,
Yeah.
Lisa, you seem to be
Well, but
perturbed.
now even beyond the courts, you have people who label themselves Republican who are what? I don't know what they are anymore. They seem to have no ethics. They seem to have no regard for the Constitution. They seem to be forgetting that Reagan ever existed. They are just
They're not playing their role either in terms of
Exactly.
being a check for the president. They're just
no. They're just
acquiescing
like
completely.
the door's open. We're gonna pillage and grab everything we can because of greed. But there's
And power.
and power,
But
and
aren't
there's
I hearing
no
the same thing that I
respect.
heard about Obama from the other
No.
side? Sure.
You
On
may
the
have
other
heard it from
side?
the other
Well, you
side.
may have
but
heard that
how-
from the other
how
side.
does
I
that
heard the
play out with-
Republicans saying Obama could care less about the Constitution. If he can't get it
He's a
through Congress.
constitutional attorney.
I know, but okay, I'll do an executive order.
So what they say doesn't always mean it's so. And they're
Yeah.
going to
Yes.
throw out any bomb. And Rachel Maddow says it, don't listen to what they say, listen to what they do. What did Obama do? You know, he did have a lot of respect for the Constitution. He did try to play by the rules. Almost too nice, a lot of people said in the beginning. When he first took office, they were saying he was kind of a marshmallow. He was trying to play nice.
Okay, but explain this budget to me. The budget that was just passed, trillions of dollars in deficit spending
Right.
from people who were phobic about that
That's right.
when any recent
When it
Democrat
was
was in
Obama
office.
spending for
Right.
social,
That's right.
the Republicans went
Racism.
crazy over the budget.
Racism.
Or,
Do you
well,
think?
or
Yeah.
partisanship, and where do
No,
you draw
do you-
the line?
do you
Where
really
does
think-
one stop and
I
the
think
It
next?
for
was just
some-
race.
I
Maybe
think-
it was some.
I
but
think for some it
Oh,
was.
no, it was racism.
And
It was
partisanship.
both.
Right.
It was
And
both.
partisanship.
But the
Today, the Republicans
Betterment?
are saying, I don't care about the deficit because I want to spend on military. Well, wait a minute. You were the guy screaming about the
Right.
deficit
Thank
when
you.
it was not military.
Right.
Right.
That's right.
Right? You were screaming
Basically-
about, I mean, look at the economy. I mean, right, wrong, or indifferent, it's growing. Okay, under
It was-
Obama, we had an anemic.
No, it wasn't.
No, it
Toward the
wasn't.
end, it was
Well, it
not.
took a
any-
long time to recover from the crash.
8-year, well, again,
Well,
here-
and-
it was all Bush.
massive
No.
Well, I'm not saying,
downswing.
but
2% a
almost
year.
all of the
Right.
deficit spending can
2%
be
a year.
attributed to things Bush
For
started.
8 years.
The war,
He's the only
and
With a huge
president.
amount going to the war effort.
Right, so why didn't he stop it?
So,
Well, because you can't stop paying for veterans' benefits, and you can't stop.
No, but
you have to
you
go on
could have
paying
stopped.
interest
There were
on the debt that
trillions
was
of dollars.
borrowed to pay for that war.
Well, I'm saying, wait a minute, we're going to stop. What are we doing? I mean, America is probably, not probably, it is the best fighting force in the world. It's probably one of the worst police forces in the world. So Bush 1 went into Kuwait and said, we're going to kick Iraq out. Boom, kicked them out, stopped at the border, said our job is done, and went home. To me, that was good.
That-
But then all of a sudden, when we say now we're going to try and convince,
We've been doing this for 15 years
but
now.
that's my problem. One, what gives me the right to go into your country and say, you should be more like us? No,
well,
now,
not- and furthermore, the track record of doing that isn't very good.
yeah.
well, no.
No.
But on the other hand, I have no
And-
problem with saying, you mess with me, I'm going to leave you alone. Don't mess with me.
Right. And
That is a-
now,
that is a totally valid argument, but it does not jive with what the budget that was just passed exhibits.
And see, I have a problem. I mean, you know, I'm physically, the blue people don't accept me. And I'll take it because
yeah,
I'm
we've
too
had this
physically
conversation before.
conservative. I only want to spend the money I have. Actually, I'd spend less because I'd want to tuck some away. But that, I couldn't be Republican and support this kind of deficit.
No.
I don't care what it's for.
But the question is, do
And
we
this-
really need that much military spending too?
Well, and you're talking about that, I mean, Trump has just nominated a national security advisor who would like to go to war
Bit
with the rest of the
hawkish?
world.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't understand how he thinks that we can wage war against North Korea and Iran at
And
the
Iraq.
same time. I mean,
See,
it
you
just
know,
seems
and
completely
Iraq
loony to
and
me.
The
Syria.
problem I have,
Maybe he's
Even if it
investing-
was justifiable to do those
the
things.
problem I have is, if it was me, and I know I'm in a dreamland, I would call the dingling and say, okay, you're running your country. Do you realize it's on a peninsula? There's a lot of submarines surrounding you. Mess with me, and I'm telling you, I don't care what the world thinks.
Bad
I'm
things
going to
will
wipe
happen.
you out.
Yeah.
Don't mess with me, I'm going to leave you alone. So when you say go to war, no. To me, you mess with me, and I'm not going to send my sons and my daughters to go get killed. I'm going to send very bad weapons that I've spent trillions of dollars developing, and I'm going to wipe you out. But
And then-
don't mess with me.
None of that will happen.
End of story.
And that's
I
been
bet-
our posture all along.
But you have John Bolton, who's ready to go to war. And
But
he's
what does
ready to
that
shoot.
mean?
He's ready to shoot the first.
I mean, I feel like saying, Mr.
first
Bolton,
and-
you got grandkids? Make them the first people on the line. And tell me again,
That this is what you want to do.
You really want to do this?
Yeah.
I don't think he's a person you can reason with too well. That's just my sense.
Well, he is, he doesn't just have an anger management problem, he is an anger management problem. And that's a well-documented thing
Oh,
about
yeah.
him.
he's
We've
been
been in
poor reputation.
Afghanistan because it's a crap show.
It is,
We've
and
been there
always
for
has been.
over a decade.
Oh,
And what have we really accomplished?
16
Nothing.
years, I think.
Yeah, it's a decade and a half.
And actually, things are getting worse there now.
Well, now that we're pulling out, they're saying, no, we're going back to living the way we always did.
Right,
And we
which
say, well,
is-
that's terrible. Well,
Well,
why
we give
is
them
it
nothing
my
way to
right?
say.
Who are we to say?
Why is it
Yeah.
my right to say, you need to live
So-
like we do?
So if we want the budget to work, it is very expensive to tell people how they should live.
Yeah.
It's really, it ends up breaking the bank.
Yes, as it has over and
And
over.
over and over again.
Look back at Vietnam, look
Holy
back at
mackerel.
Korea, look now at Iraq and when you think of how much money we've put in there, I don't know that I can feel
What's the
good about
return
it.
on investment?
We're already in
Nothing.
3 wars. Do we want to add 2 more?
But why are we, it's not a war though. We
Well,
call it a war. To me,
Not until we get into it.
we're trying to be policemen and say, we want you to change your way of living to ours. Fundamentally, I don't know that I have the right.
I don't think it's
I
that
don't-
anymore.
we
I think it's
don't.
resource
We don't have the right.
allocation.
You think it has to do with oil and other resources,
Minerals.
mostly?
But we're not
Mostly
getting
oil.
any.
But the long-term picture is that somebody will sooner or later. Not somebody country, somebody corporation.
16 years later, I'm still waiting. You know, what did Einstein say about doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome?
Yeah.
Income,
Yeah.
really.
You know, so I have a hard time with the fact that if somebody came to Milford and invaded Milford or said, we have a better way of living, didn't we do that with the casino? And Milford said, no thanks, we like who we are. Would I pick up a gun and fight? Yeah, because I like
If
what
they
Milford
came in
is.
with guns to do this to you.
I don't care how. They come in with slingshots. I'm going to fight them because I really like
So
Milford.
what's the issue with Korea anyway?
Well,
Besides the fact that Kim Jong-un or whatever is kind of a mental midget, and
The issue is that he has nuclear weapons.
Right,
And we
but-
don't want him to have.
Right,
The
but-
issue is he's threatened us.
so but he's
Nobody
threatened us
else
in
has
the
ever
past.
said.
and the South Koreans.
But also, I mean, our administration was very provocative of him too.
Well,
I mean, the
absolutely.
name calling.
That is going to
and
be a good
that-
place for us to pick up on our next show because we're actually out of time.
Oh no.
Oh, well, we're
So,
getting on very well.
There's a ton of topics that we could go through, but for tonight, to our 6 loyal viewers, thank you for watching. May tomorrow be a better day than tonight. God bless. Good night. Thanks for joining us. And we'll pick this up on our next show.
Far too long since I've been home. Been running all my life just searching for my soul.